this was in the Los Angeles temple, he was seen during a very ecstatic kirtan laughing. And after the kirtan was over, the devotees asked why he had been laughing. And Prabhupada said, oh, he was laughing at Narada Muni. And the devotee said, what, Narada Muni? Yes, Narada Muni was there. Oh, what was Narada Muni doing? He said, he was laughing. They said, why was he laughing? He was laughing at all the mlechas and chandalas dancing and chanting Hare Krishna. In early 1970, I was living in Washington, D.C., and distributing Back to Godheads on a college campus. It may have been Kent State, you know, that's in Ohio, isn't it? It was around that time when Kent State happened, and there was so much unrest on the campuses and National Guard shooting at students, a very, very tense atmosphere. And we were there trying to distribute Back to Godheads and give out incense. That was pretty much the extent of our book distribution, Back to Godheads. Back then you'd get a quarter, you know, sell a few, and that was a big deal back then, you know. And all the students were so agitated, no one would take a magazine, and I remember I was being really upset, you know, I was getting really upset, and then a newspaper reporter came up to me and asked if he could interview me, and I said, oh, sure, you know, and I sat and talked to him about Krishna consciousness, and I made this comment. He wanted to know what I was doing before I joined this organization, and I told him a little bit about, you know, living on the hippie farm, and said I became discouraged with that philosophy. I said we were being misled by false rascals like Timothy Leary, I said to this reporter. You know, because actually I had studied some of Timothy Leary's books, and I felt betrayed because I realized they were simply saying take drugs and have great sex. And I wanted knowledge of the absolute truth, and I knew that was, you know, material. It had to do with the physical body. What does that have to do with spiritual knowledge, you know? And I became very disillusioned when I actually read one of his books and realized that was the conclusion. You know, take LSD and have great sex. So I said that to this reporter, you know. We were being misled by false rascals like Timothy, promising God in a pill, you know, just swallow this pill and see God, you know. And so they happened to, in those days, a lot of the articles that came out in newspapers, devotees were very badly misquoted. You know, they didn't understand what we were talking about, so they'd just, I think, go research a book in the library on Hinduism and write that, you know, some nonsense. But this happened to be one of the first articles where they actually quoted quite accurately, so they wrote my exact words in the paper. And I think maybe that's why this article had some particular potency, because they actually got it right, what we said. I mean, it was a very long article. A lot of other devotees said a lot of nice things too, you know. So when they showed, but this part happened to be right at the front of the article, the thing I said. And actually when they published the article in the Washington Post, a photographer came to the temple and took a picture of me for the article. When it came out, it was on the front page of the style section of the Washington Post. It was prestigious. The whole front page was this big picture of my face. Yeah, I mean, I'm extremely camera shy. I was so embarrassed, but by Krishna's mercy, I'm not photogenic usually, but by some quirk of Krishna's mercy, this was a really nice photograph. I mean, I actually looked nice in this photograph, you know, which is, you know, if I'd looked like normally, like a gargoyle, like I usually do, and it would have been horrible, but, and I had this big nose ring with a chain come into my ear, and they published that, you know, and with this article. And when they showed the article to Prabhupada, and he read my comments about Timothy Leary, you know, I'd said specifically false rascal. And of course I got that terminology from hearing Prabhupada, you know. He made a statement to the devotees that showed him the article. He said, George Harrison has given me $19,000 for printing the Krishna book, but this girl has given me $19,000 million by her statement. So, you know, I was a very young devotee when I heard that. I can't tell you how much encouraging it was. You know, perhaps Prabhupada said it to encourage me, but, you know, he was so merciful. I just basically, I wasn't exactly parroting something I'd heard from him, because I did have that realization, but it was definitely Prabhupada's inspiration that made me say that, you know. So I think that's a lot of the way Prabhupada interacted. He would inspire us, and then if we were surrendered to the inspiration, it would be this like reciprocal exchange between the guru and disciple that was extremely esoteric and difficult to explain, but I think most of us have, understand. It's an experience that one has. And we got to the Juhu beach, which was a beautiful white sand beach where Prabhupada liked to take his morning walk, and we're walking along, and Srila Prabhupada is looking out at the ocean. He said, what is that water? What is that ocean? What is that water? And nobody said anything for a while. And I remember the first thought that popped in my head was, it's Krishna's energy. But I was too shy to say anything, so I didn't speak. Nobody spoke. Finally, somebody spoke up. Actually, it was my husband. He said, oh, Prabhupada, it's the Arabian Sea. And again, I don't know if he told this story. He's probably embarrassed to hear. Prabhupada, it's the Arabian Sea. And so, again, Prabhupada was already angry from the incident at the door, and he, again, lightning bolts shot out of his eye. You think your spiritual master is so nonsense he doesn't know that's the Arabian Sea? You think I don't know that's the Arabian Sea? That obviously wasn't the answer he was looking for. And so then Satsa Rupa popped, oh, it's Krishna's energy. Yes. And he gave the example of how the ocean waves just come up, instead of inundating the whole land and flooding everything, they just come up, to a certain, how that's Krishna's arrangement, how nature works under the laws of, that Krishna establishes. And so that was the one morning walk I went on. It was very, very instructive. When Srila Prabhupada chastised, again, it was that experience where you felt bad, but it wasn't like the low self-esteem. You felt cleansed. You didn't feel bad. You felt like you learned a valuable lesson. You felt cleansed. Nothing with Srila Prabhupada ever made you feel bad about yourself. It was all growth and encouragement, whether he chastised or praised. So on this morning walk, there were these large gates, large, huge wooden doors at the entrance to the property that were closed at night. And it was after Mangalarti. Srila Prabhupada was going on his morning walk. We were trailing along with him, and he came to the wooden gates, and they were closed. And Srila Prabhupada was livid. He was so angry. Why the gates are closed? He said, you think this Mangalarti is just for you? No, it is for all of them. Why? You must keep these gates open so the villagers, the nearby villagers, can come to Mangalarti. Oh, he was very, very angry. That we were so self-centered and thoughtless. That you think this Krishna consciousness, this Mangalarti is just for you. He was always teaching us to think of others, giving Krishna consciousness to others, And that way we would save ourselves. By trying to save others, we would save ourselves. But this being so concerned just for our own advancement and to hell with everybody, that wasn't Prabhupada's way. The problem was I was having trouble with an abusive marriage partner, and it was like very severe, and I wanted to commit suicide. And I told Srila Prabhupada that. I said, Srila Prabhupada, I can't be Krishna conscious. I feel like I'm going to commit suicide. I just kind of laid it out. I just kind of blurted it out. I didn't know what else to do, so I just, well, I bothered him. I better tell him, well, why I bothered him. Just kind of blurted it out. And then, Srila Prabhupada said, he paused. He was very thoughtful. Took me very seriously. Wasn't sentimental. Like I said, he was detached. He was, oh, you poor little thing, kind of thing, He looked me right in the eye, and I was asking if I could live separately from my husband. I wasn't asking for a divorce or that I wanted to marry someone else, or, I just needed to be free of the stress of that situation so I could remain in the movement and continue. And he said, he was kind of looking off, not quite looking, he was very thoughtful, and then he looked me, like his eyes opened wide, and he looked me right in the eye, and he said, there will not be other men? Oh, no, Srila Prabhupada. I mean, that was the last thing on my mind at the time. I was really at the stage where the thought of man-female relationships did make me spit. I was like that, but it was mundane. It was forced by a mundane. It wasn't like any kind of great spiritual realization. It was just so unbearably miserable. And he said, there will not be other men? Oh, no, Srila Prabhupada. He said, you will stay in our temple. Yes, Srila Prabhupada. So those two things. It's not like he was going to sanction some divorce and remarriage. He wasn't going to go that far, you know. But he said, all right, you may stay here in the Sispalika, you know, and that was kind of it, you know. They went in to meet Srila Prabhupada. My mother took a picture. I have a photograph of my father sitting, Srila Prabhupada sitting on the floor behind his desk, and my dad sitting cross-legged in front of, and they're both looking at the camera, and they're both smiling so effulgently, the same smile. And I call that picture my two fathers. It's like my father, my material father is reflecting the effulgent smile of my spiritual father. And so my parents thanked Srila Prabhupada for saving their daughter from drugs and degraded hippie life. And Srila Prabhupada smiled and said, yes, many parents thank me. And then he said, they told him they were concerned about their daughter because I was in India and it was hard to have communication. They didn't know what was happening. They were concerned about me. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, I'm also concerned about my children. So, he chatted with my parents on that level of parents. He knew how to relate to everybody. And then he gave my parents some prasadam from his plate. He was just, showered them with mercy also. At the first Mayapur festival in 1972, when the cornerstone laying ceremony occurred, it was just around the time when devotees were starting to learn some of the Indian styles of chanting, particularly the Bengali styles of chanting, which was quite different. Srila Prabhupada's way that he taught us to chant was very distinct. In my view, completely transcendental, not of this world, and very, very different from the so-called Bengali style of chanting, which is like folk music, like traditional folk music, melodies and styles passed down. It's like a form of entertainment or music. When the devotees started imbibing that change, from simply absorbing Srila Prabhupada's example and trying to emulate it in our chanting, to adopting some of these Indian styles and techniques and different drum beats than the one Prabhupada taught us. And he expressed some displeasure with that at the beginning when it started. And especially at the beginning when the devotees weren't very good at it. There was one devotee, his name was Achyutananda Maharaj. He'd been in India for some time and had learned some of these things, I believe, mostly from some of Prabhupada's godbrothers in Gaudiya Math and maybe some other places, I'm not sure. But he started teaching this to the other devotees, In fact, he was quite, I hesitate to use the word puffed up, but he was a little bit arrogant about it. Oh, you don't know how to chant. I'll teach you how you should be chanting. Here in India, you have to do it this way. And some devotees kind of fell for it because it was catchy and the drum beats were catchy and catchy tunes and, it led to... But Srila Prabhupada, at the beginning, the devotees weren't very good at it, so the result was kind of a cacophony of a very unpleasant sound vibration, rather than the beautiful angelic chanting that we used to do under Prabhupada's tutelage. It became just a mess, And Prabhupada would hear that going on sometimes from his grass house, and he would say, "It is a pinching sound." He'd make a face. "It is a pinching sound," and he would close his window so he didn't have to hear it. When the kirtan was over, he would say, "Thank goodness it's over." Je anilo Premadana Koruna Prachu